Hello, I'm Grant Wiley from Worthington Games. We've already discussed what's in the box. Today, we'll begin a series of rules explanations on how to play War and Peace. To begin our rules explanation, we'll begin with a brief overview of the pieces and the board. The board portrays Europe during 1805. You have your major countries color-coded to match their military units. Here you see France in blue with their military units in blue, England in red with their military units in red, you have Spain in yellow, the Austrians in white, the Prussians in gray, and Russia in green. Each military unit has a specific cost and battle capability. The board area, land areas, and sea areas are divided on the board by black lines, breaking each area up for movement and combat. Also within each area are white circles with numbers inside of them between 0 and 4 points. These represent the resource points, which are effectively money for each of the major nations, allowing them to conduct political actions as well as military purchases. Each country also has a capital area portrayed by a flag. Here you see the Paris area enclosed in the black border lines worth a resource point value of 3. London is portrayed by the British flag, Spain by the Spanish flag, Austria, the Austrian flag, and so on. Military units. Each military unit costs a certain number of resource points. Here we see a Spanish infantry that cost 2 resource points. All infantry cost 2 resource points for all nations. Artillery costs 3 resource points. Cavalry 4 resource points. Naval units, fleets, 5 resource points. The white chips represent 1 unit of the other type. So a white chip stacked under a infantry unit would represent 2 infantry units. Note that chips may not be left in an area by themselves. A military unit such as an infantry, cavalry, artillery must always be on top of the chip. Red chips represent 5 units. So a red chip under a white chip with an infantry unit on top would represent 7 infantry. A little close there. So that's 7 infantry units. Further in the game, there are 2 counters, one representing Napoleon in blue and one representing Wellington in red. We'll talk about the combat capabilities of the units and then talk about how these counters affect them. In combat, when 2 sets of enemy nations end up in the same area, combat occurs. The active player being the attacker, the non-active player the defender. Each combat unit rolls a certain number of dice, 1 for each unit present, and they roll certain numbers that hit depending on the type of unit. Here we see a battle board set up for Austrian Area A5 from the detailed example of play. Infantry hit on defense rolls of 1 and attack rolls of 1. Artillery hit on attack and defense rolls of 2. Cavalry is a little bit different. Attacking cavalry hit on die rolls of 1, 2, or 3. Defending hit on die rolls of 1. Also with artillery, let me make sure that it's clear. Artillery attacking and defending hit on die rolls of 1 or 2. So you have to roll the die roll present or less in order to hit. Going back to the counters I talked about, the Napoleon and Wellington counters. Wellington, with up to 8 British infantry, when defending in an area, hit on die rolls of 1 or 2. So if you had 12 British infantry in an area, Napoleon and 8 of them Wellington and 8 of them would hit on die rolls of 1 or 2. The other 4 infantry would hit on die rolls of 1. Exactly the opposite is true of Napoleon. Up to 8 attacking French infantry, shown here on the attacker side, hit on die rolls of 1 or 2. Any other additional infantry in the area would hit on die rolls of 1. So let's roll out this combat real quick and just walk you through a combat. Then we'll discuss naval combat. I have 7 French infantry here. I roll my 5 dice, looking for rolls of 1. I've scored 1 hit. The Austrian player, because combat is considered simultaneous, chooses to lose 1 infantry. He places that back behind the defender loss line. That infantry will get to roll before it's eliminated. The French still have 2 French infantry to roll for. They rolled a 4 and a 2. Therefore, there are no additional hits. The French artillery will now roll. He gets 1 die and hits on a die roll of 1 or 2. He rolled a 4, which is a miss. The 4 French cavalry hit on die rolls of 1, 2, or 3. And Yahtzee, he rolls 3 ones and a 3, which scores 4 hits. The Austrian player chooses to lose the remaining 4 infantry he has in that area. However, they do get to roll before they're eliminated. The defender, on die rolls of 6, had the option to retreat a unit of that type to an adjacent area. However, because all of the infantry has been eliminated, those infantry cannot retreat. So we roll the 5 Austrian infantry, scoring a hit for each one, and they do score 1 hit. The French lose their infantry. However, since this French infantry has already rolled in combat, he's eliminated and does not get to roll again. So remove these pieces from the game board. They are out of the battle. The Austrian artillery gets to roll. He rolls a 6, which is a miss. However, he can retreat because of the 6 rolled, and he will choose to retreat. And the 2 Austrian cavalry now get to roll. A 4 and a 3, they needed to roll a 1. Both of those are misses. The Austrian artillery is now out of the battle. However, we won't retreat him until after the combat is complete. We now go to round 2. The attacker has the option of retreating. However, since the French are doing so well here, they won't. The defender does not unless he's rolled a 6 for a piece. So the attacker rolls for his infantry. He's got 6 infantry left. He does roll 1-1. That's a hit on one of the cavalry. And he has still got 1 infantry left to roll. He misses. The artillery now rolls 1 or 2. He rolls a 1. The last defending cavalry is eliminated. We now go to the defending cavalry roll. There's no purpose in rolling the French cavalry as they're not needed. They've already eliminated all the Austrian cavalry. And again, even if the Austrian cavalry at this point roll a 6, they cannot retreat because they've both been eliminated. However, they do get to roll 2 once. They score a hit. So we eliminate 1 more French infantry, which have already rolled. And our battle is over. We remove the Austrian cavalry from the board. The remaining Austrian artillery piece retreats. The battle occurred here in area A5. He can retreat to any adjacent area he controls. A1 is adjacent, so they retreat. You place the French units into the area that they won the battle in. And that's how battle's conducted. I'm going to show you a naval combat real quick because it's just a little bit different. I'm just going to line up a couple of ships over here for you. And what we have is a British ship fighting a Spanish ship. Let's get a Spaniard in there. Ships sink opposing ships on a die roll of 1. As you can see on the battle board here, and they send an enemy ship back to port disabled on a roll of 2, and it goes to the closest port controlled by that country. And if there's a choice of 2 or more, the controlling player gets to decide. So we'll start with the British rolling their die on a 1 or a 2. They roll a 2. The Spanish ship is disabled. We have the British as the attacker. The Spanish ship is disabled. However, he does get to return fire. He rolls a 2, so the British ship is disabled. Both ships would then go back to their closest controlled area. Now, let's talk about control on the board a little bit. Control markers are normally placed in areas that are don't start under friendly control, but revert to friendly control through military conquest or political actions. Again, the home areas are color-coded to match military unit. There are buffer areas that are khaki. They have no country. The French start out in control of several of them. That shouldn't be there. I started playing this game earlier. They have no military units, however they are worth resource points. It costs 3 resource points to declare war on a buffer area. So during the unit purchase phase, if France declared war on neutral area N3, all the French player would have to do is move a military unit in and during the unit placement phase place a flag. We're going to walk real quick through the sequence of play. I know I'm kind of doing this out of order, but I just wanted to point out some key points to y'all. A key point too, and we had this in the rules originally, somehow it got deleted out once we were going to press. The British control Gibraltar down here in the foot of Spain. It's worth 0 resource points. During the unit placement phase, the sequence is you count your resource points. So let's walk through that real quick, sequence of play. We'll go through the British sequence of play. The British count their resource points for areas they control on the board. So they control Pier 1, 2, 3, 5. Now, you also receive resource points for certain naval sea zones. All the sea zones are worth 1 resource point. So they control the English Channel, that's worth 1. They control the Central Atlantic, that's worth 1. They control the South Atlantic, that's worth 1. And the North Sea, also worth 1. So you can total the 5 land areas plus the 4 sea areas. The British would get 9 resource points, which are kept track of on the resource point track over here in the corner. So we would move the British to 9 resource points. With that, they can purchase military units, and so for the sake of those 9 points, we're going to say the British purchase 1 ship worth 5, and they'll buy 2 infantry worth 4 more for a total of 9. These are placed off to the side of the board until the unit placement phase, which is one of the last phases of the game. Following the resource point phase, the players do the purchase phase, like I just said. They go to combat movement. And combat movement is moving any unit into a neutral or enemy area. So this naval unit here in the North Sea, if I wanted to move him into the Baltic Sea, since it's a neutral area, I don't have to declare war on the Baltic Sea. I would just move him over. Now, as soon as I move out of the North Sea, this control marker is removed. That's the only thing with naval units. You have to have a naval unit in a sea zone to control it. With land units, it's a little bit different. You have to declare war on a neutral land area. So if the British wanted to move units here into Portugal, they would have to declare war on Portugal, which costs 3 resource points. And then move their units in if they wanted. There are no neutral resource units. However, once they do declare war on Portugal, anybody can move in there without having to spend the 3 resource points to declare war. So Britain declares war on Portugal, that costs them 3 resource points. The Spanish could then move in there if the British didn't get troops in there right away, and Spain would not have to spend the 3 resource points to do that. Following the combat movement phase, obviously, there's combat and then non-combat movement. And non-combat movement involves moving any of your units that did not move during the combat phase. You are not allowed to move into any enemy-occupied or controlled land area or sea zone. And at the end of non-combat movement, players check for supply and conduct attrition. And supply is basically just having a line of control markers back to a home area. And then you do your unit placement phase. And again, British units may not be placed in Gibraltar during the unit placement phase. That's merely a land holding for Britain.